incredible, incredible human, Tara Kemp. If you don't already follow her, you're going to feel so at ease, so connected, so not alone. Seeing her face on your Instagram page, I'm so grateful for this woman. We connect on so many levels, and gosh, let's get you into this conversation. Tara Kemp, PhD, is a mental health coach and researcher. She is the founder and CEO of Reconnect Collective, which houses evidence-based programs and resources to build a healthy relationship with food, body, and self. The deep, fun, bright, lovely, inspiring human herself, the Tara Kemp. Wow, I love hearing that you're in a spacious season right now. Could you just expand on that a little bit for us?
Totally. Yeah, so I towards the end of last year, it was one of those things that kind of just like slowly inched its way further and further into my consciousness until I hit a point where I was like, okay, this is very clear. Like at first it was like, okay, towards the end of the summer, I was like, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed more than usual. And I'm just noticing little things in myself. Like I'm not really responding to text messages or emails in a timely manner, or I'm noticing myself not want to do things that I know I enjoy doing, or I notice myself feeling less socially inclined. And just like was seeing all those little hints starting to come in. And yeah, then towards the end of last year, I just hit a point where I was like, you know what? Like I am being told that this is a time for rest and like just embodying. I haven't read the book Wintering, but I feel like that's what I'm doing right now. And yeah, it was one of those decisions that like when you're in the moment and you're first considering the decision, it kind of feels like a hard decision, especially when it's like there's all of these logical shoulds that say, you're my business. I was in a big season of growth. I finished my PhD last year and went all in on the business, and I just hired new employees. And so there was a lot going on there. And there were so many reasons that it was like, no, this is not the time to slow down. Like, this is the time to either hold the course or even ramp up. But I don't live my life based on shoulds and stories and logic. I really don't. I don't really value logic that much, which is something that a lot of people find kind of strange. But um, yeah, I'm just here to follow the call of my body and soul. And that was telling me that it was time to take a pause. And so as soon as I made that decision, it immediately was just clear like this is absolutely the right decision. And it's been so nourishing. So, yeah, it's just been really, really wonderful, and the main thing, it's not that I'm not doing anything, like, I'm here recording this interview with you and, I'm doing some things here and there, but I've given myself the space to have no obligations and to be able to say no to anything and everything, and to have days where I sit down and do things from inspiration and joy and passion and truly like heart-led work. And then I have plenty of days where I like play my sound bowls and go to a yoga class and go sit at the hot springs with a friend and then journal for 2 hours. And then, like that's my day. And it's just so beautiful. Or simply like have time to like, I don't know, not have a schedule running in the back of my mind. Like I feel like previously I was someone or I am someone who is good at like being present in the moment, but it's almost like I would schedule that presence where I would have this timer in the back of my mind that's like, okay, like I've scheduled this hike with a friend and I know that I need to be back by this time so that I can finish XYZ things before the end of the night so that I can do this so that I can, yada yada and the list goes on. And now it's so nice to just be like, oh, like my sister called and I'm going to answer the phone and I don't have any time crunch in my head about when the call needs to end, or like my partner's dad is here right now, and to just be like, oh, like you guys just got back from running an errand, like I'm just going to sit and talk with you and not have this like timer in the back, just like this schedule or this like list. So it's a different level of presence and just like leaning into flow that has been nice to just be with.
Wow. God, that was so
Sorry, that
nourishing.
was a long answer, but
Oh, do not. If you apologize one more time, I'm gonna Zoom slap you.
Okay.
Seriously, that
Perfect.
was so nourishing and exactly the medicine that I know I needed to hear. It's
Mm,
beautiful the permission that you just gave me, and I'm sure so many people, just to be able to like actually let go of the shoulds. And you are really practicing what you preach by doing this.
mm,
I think it would be a disservice to your team, right? All of your clients, all of that you do, to bury and numb and ignore these signals. Oh my gosh. And that's so brave. It just goes to show the work that you've done to have the trust to be like, actually, if I listen to my innate body wisdom, everything's going to work out, everything's going to be okay. Like it's actually probably going to do even better in the long run. Like that's how chronic disease really manifests is we just ignore
hmm.
these signals. So it's so exciting to get to talk with you. And very, very cool hearing the specifics around the lists. I just was with a friend this morning on a hike and I was like, okay, I gotta get back for this patient call at this time. And we were joking that I would get in fights with my past partner because when, like in between calls, if we were sitting down to eat lunch or something, I would literally set a timer and be
Mm,
like, okay, we can talk for until this timer goes off and I'm gonna go prep for my patient. He'd be like, oh my God, this stupid timer. Like he wanted to like throw it out the window. And of course, there's times where I could actually be really, really present and not have the timer. But I love like at this time I'm doing this, at this time I'm doing that, at this time I'm doing that. And
right.
it prevents me from like doom scrolling. It prevents me from just like being distracted. But I also really, really, really acknowledge and feel that, oh my gosh, that can't be all the time. It's just like,
Right. Well, and the ultimate truth is always in duality, right? So, like, yes, it feels so good to fill our day with things that are meaningful, and it feels so good to make sure we're not wasting our time. Like, who wants to look back on the day and be like, oh my gosh, all I did was like scroll on Instagram and like let my mind spiral into terrible things. And then, like, what did I even do today that, brought life to my life? Like, no one wants to have that experience. And at the same time, you don't want to just fill your life with a bunch of things, especially when you can feel in your body that it's not serving you. But also, you don't want to just like, I feel like we love to stack things, especially
yeah,
those that are like productivity minded, achievement oriented, which is most of society because we've been taught that. And yeah, like there's something that's really like fun and exciting about that. Like people love watching like Alex Hormozy and back in the day Gary Vee. I don't know, he's still relevant. But it's like, and there can be something really fun. It's like you listen to those and you're like, yeah, you're like, I can do so much and I can make the most of my time. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. Like, that's great. There's something fun about it's like getting into that like vibe or getting into that energy. That's really fun. That's just currently antithetical to what my body is wanting and needing.
yeah.
And so I'm just recognizing that. But yeah, I totally have that in me. and
Yeah.
and it's like both are beautiful, It's just that it's when one becomes overbalanced or over out of
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah, you're speaking to this so beautifully. Like I wasn't able to pinpoint it, but you're right. Like there's a place where we're actually allowed to take a step back from that. I think a lot of
Hmm.
people are really like, "Oh no, I'm feeling this way. That's not right. That's not okay. I need to not feel this way. What can I do to not feel this?
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's more caffeine, like maybe it's right." Instead of actually letting the pendulum swing so it can swing back, really just trusting that. Oh, it's so beautiful. And
Mm.
yeah, I loved. Can we just take a step back for a second? You're so wise. You've done so much. Like, but the last time I had you on my podcast, it was amidst, right, getting this PhD. Could you tell more about your research and everything that you've been up to and how that feels?
Yeah, totally. Getting the PhD, man, it was a really fun journey. I feel really grateful to have found the mentors that I did. I had the most incredible team of mentors that just really, I just felt so seen and championed. They really believed in what I wanted to do and actually encouraged me towards work that I kind of felt imposter syndrome around doing. At the time when I first started my PhD. So I'll say first that I ended up doing my dissertation research on the effects of veganism on a person's process of recovery who's recovering from disordered eating. And at the time when I started my program, there were no recovery centers that I was aware of or that I could find. I was looking into them. There were no recovery centers that I could find that publicly stated that they allowed vegan clients into their recovery center, into their programs, into their treatment programs. And then about 2 years into my degree, there were two, and who had like public statements like, we accept vegan patients. And I would make phone calls to different places and kind of just try and research like, hey, I would pretend to be someone who wanted to come in, and I would say, I am wondering if you accept vegan patients, and they would say no. And
Wow.
so at the time, it just felt, I just didn't feel like I had built up the credibility to take on the issue um, of that topic, of potentially allowing veganism into that process, and kind of countering the commonplace belief, the widespread belief at that time, and probably, I mean, definitely still now, which is that, if someone's in treatment for an eating disorder, veganism is part of that eating disorder. Like, the two are intertwined, no question. Um, and so I ended up researching that topic, and I sought out to really understand, not so much is that true or isn't that true, because I knew that it was sometimes true and sometimes not true already, just based on my own experience. So it was more so, in what cases is it true? In what cases is it not true? What affects that? Like, what influences whether or not it actually is beneficial for someone to step away from veganism while they're in recovery from their disordered eating, versus in what cases is that actually harmful? Because there were a lot of anecdotal stories saying that it was harmful for a number of reasons. And so yeah, that's what I studied, and I can go into some of what that looked like. But ultimately, to kind of summarize that, I'll just say that I was actually surprised to find that for the most part, um, what I found was that they aren't intertwined inherently. They're actually inherently separable. They are two separate things, veganism and disordered eating. And that in basically every case, you can separate the two into two separate parts. And it still is a process of, okay, to what extent are we going to challenge this thing? To what extent are we going to maintain it? And that, is a whole therapeutic, introspective process between a counselor and a patient. And there's not like, here's the blanket solution that you can just apply widespread to everyone. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing in a lot of the eating disorder recovery space, is that it's being tailored more towards, I mean, this is the medical field in general. I'm sure that you can speak to this even more than I can probably, but just, tailoring to what does insurance cover, and what are the, markers that we can say, okay, and for certain factors that might be true, like you can show whether someone's cholesterol went down or their A1C went down, but it's a lot harder to track actual progress from disordered eating, because they're using things like weight metrics when it's not a disease that's really about food or weight. Those are symptoms, and it's a mental health condition. And mental health is a lot, they're not tracking that in a way that I think is suitable, and is not doing justice to a person's healing process in a way that's going to actually support them to have a sustainable recovery. So anyways, that's a whole rabbit hole that we can go into if you want, but that's what I was researching, and it was a really beautiful process. I got to interview dozens of women about their experience, and that's what I love doing. I love talking to people. I love understanding people and helping them to feel understood, and bringing, words to their story. And I got to do that. And like I said, I had a team of people, team of mentors that really believed in me and really supported me in a topic that's quite controversial. So that was really beautiful. And yeah, so since then, since I graduated and did all of that, I've just been working really hard to continue growing what my business, which is that I coach women on their relationship with food, body, and ultimately self. That's the root of it all. It all comes back to inner work. Those foundational pieces are the relationship that you have with yourself, first and foremost, and then your body and food kind of are like higher tiered pieces that just stem from that core relationship. And so, I have a program that has a really, like, I'm very proud of it. I will toot its horn, just that it has like an incredible track record of helping people to really overcome things that in a lot of cases they've been dealing with for decades, if not their whole life. I work with women who it's like, I was 5 when I first started realizing that I should restrict, or I was, 9, or whatever it is. And yeah, it's so beautiful, it's so fun. I love the work that I do. And so Reconnect Academy is that program. And that's what I've been up to in the
See?
work world.
Yeah, in one very I mean it's a big realm, but you're such a multi-dimensional being. I'm sure like there's
Mm.
a lot going on. Oh man, this is fascinating. Thank you for being brave and studying this. It's crazy how, yeah, monitoring emotional wellness is not exactly something that has been able to be accurately tracked, I would say, right? Getting
Hmm.
recall over the day, over the past week, it's like, is that really a good snapshot of their mental health? Like, it's just a really interesting thing to try to tackle. And oh my gosh, yeah, when it comes to diagnosing an eating disorder, sure, in as a dietitian, we're taught, of course, right? If there are deficiencies present, if they're underweight, that's, but also if there's this negative headspace, well, how do you measure that really?
Hmm.
And you're making me think, come to mind, okay, can we put together things like, I don't know, monitoring your blood sugar or yeah, stepping onto the scale or um avoiding gluten. Like there's so many health promoting behaviors, including like choosing vegan options. Are these all intertwined with disordered eating, right? It's so beautiful to hear that actually they're not just because someone's vegan, just because someone's monitoring their weight, just because someone, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from this negative headspace around it.
Hmm.
Oh man, this is really, really fascinating. And I think we're actually in a day and age. I just was interviewing Nicole Gibson, who's developing it's called In Truth. It's basically like a blood sugar monitor, but it does monitor emotions. Like we're in the age of AI where you can start,
Whoa.
it's like very, very fresh and very new. And I think it's gonna be really interesting, hopefully an interesting tool for diagnosing these things and seeing progress with these things. Oh man. But in moving forward, I know that you have come to this for thanks to some beautiful darkness, thanks to some beautiful. Would you like to speak to that a little bit? And I'd love to hear too, just lately, what are your tools? What are your
Yeah, for sure. So, I obviously have my story. Maybe that isn't obvious, but I, of course, to me, that's why there is so much passion within this, is because I have experienced it myself. And then from there, ended up in an industry where I was seeing it in so many others. And it really helped bring a new level of passion to wanting to fill a gap that I saw. So essentially, I'll try and do a short version of the story, but I tend to be long-winded and I'm a very complex
I love
human. So
it. It doesn't have to
so
be
we'll see
short.
where this goes. But, I truly feel that I just inherently came into this world as a highly sensitive being, and just part and parcel to that experience and not having regulating tools as a child and feeling just a little bit confused and quite misunderstood, and just had a lot around that experience as a kid. And um, I think that part of that was part of that kind of just played into me dealing with anxiety, OCD, um, eventually disordered eating. And so those were things that just mental health has been part of my life for my whole life. I just didn't know it
Mm.
until I was much older and realized, had more clarity and understanding about myself and about what was happening for me. Um, I knew that I was different. I knew that I was super introspective. I knew that, I had this kind of like old soul feeling. I knew that things were more overwhelming or scary for me as a kid. But yeah, so anyways, that's all just to say this has been a lifelong journey for me. Um, and disordered eating was very much part of that in my late middle school, early high school years. Ninth grade was like the big year, and then everything after that was kind of like, some multiple years of, I call it kind of like fumbling in the dark
Mm.
experience where um when you have the recognition that something isn't right and that you want to make changes, but you don't have the right tools and resources to do so. And so I was just kind of finding my way. And that was a solo process for me. I was taken to specialists here and there, not like an inpatient or outpatient program for disordered eating, but more so like a dietitian, another dietitian, a doctor who would like monitor this, or I would talk to someone about food. And just the messages that I was receiving didn't resonate with me. They really didn't. And it was all very weight focused. And there were certain things that were, um, I didn't at the time realize that were just like not even, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like squashed almost, or minimized, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. Like I wasn't getting my period, and
Mhm.
I knew that was not good. And so I told my parents, I was like, hey, like I'm not getting my period. And when I went to the doctor, it was like, they asked me a bunch of questions, and then it was like, oh, well, you're a cross country runner. And so that makes sense. So here's a birth control pill. And I didn't even realize
Oh,
until years later that I was like, wait, like, so it was just an interesting experience where for me, it wasn't about food. Like the origins of the disordered eating
right.
were not food based. It was very much like life circumstances, loss of identity, um, like inner chaos
Yeah.
needing external control experience. And so as soon as I realized what was happening, when someone pointed out to me what was happening, I was very much committed to the process of healing, and I wanted to, but the messages that I was receiving weren't helpful. Like I went to a dietitian who like told me to like measure everything that I was eating and like document
What?
it. And I was like, this feels
Oh
not like what
God.
I need. And like just I just did not get the right help that I needed. And so it was a solo journey for me. Um and along the way, finding a plant-based diet was kind of the first time since I had started. It was almost like, for me, it wasn't that thinking more about food became the eating disorder. It was that the disordered eating like led to me, like the process of recovery led me to think more about food. Because I was trying to figure out, okay, I just fell into this really unhealthy behavior pattern. Like, what does it actually look like to have a healthy relationship with food? And that was really disorienting for me because I was looking around at what was normal in my high school and in the people in my life. And it was like, wait, none of this looks healthy. But all of these people are being seen as normal. Like all of my friends, it's like, oh, they would like, not eat the day of a dance so that they would look good in their dress. Or like all of my
Really.
friends' moms were dieting all the time. And, people would like not eat the day of Thanksgiving and then pig out and then like have, all these like sweets and treats and like overstuff themselves. And I was watching these patterns and I was just like, I just felt this friction inside and this sense of just like all of these things that other people are doing that are under this realm of normal do not seem healthy to me and do not seem like they should be normal. So I was kind of working within this. I just felt like I was like in the matrix a little bit,
Oh
but
yeah.
didn't really feel heard anywhere in that experience. So, um, anyways, in the wake of all of that, I found plant-based eating and veganism And that was the first time since that like awakening around like really paying attention to food in our world where it felt like peace and home and like just yes to me. Like I was like I found and it was like, "Oh, this makes sense. This makes so much sense to me and feels so right in my body, both from like an ethical value place, from a logic place, from literally my body just felt really good and vibrant and energized eating all these foods. And so it it just that was really healing for me. And then to, I can go into it in I'll try to be brief, but going into like all of the meaningfulness around food, it just food had become this thing that I was trying to make peace with, that I was trying to find the quote right way to eat, but also be healthy, but not too healthy because apparently that was bad and was just like trying to, it just felt like when you're playing like hot lava as a kid or the floor is lava, some people call it. And I just felt like I was just trying to figure out like jumping from pillow to pillow and like, how can I just like do the right thing? And it just felt so complicated. And there was also this aspect of like, how can I prove to other people that I'm okay? Because there was a lot of eyes on me. And finding veganism just felt like this like homecoming where it was like, oh, I can just relax and just be like, this feels so good to me and I don't have to overthink it. And it felt so meaningful. It felt like I said, just harmony. Like there's something to me, I think that in the same way that I think that ultimate truth is duality, I think that ultimate truth is harmony. Like what is right for me is also right for the planet, is right for it's just like this benefits and serves every part of the ecosystem. That we are not like individual, like it's the same thing as like boundaries. It's not like, oh, like my boundary makes your life worse. It's like, no, this actually benefits both of us for me to take care of myself. Like anything that is in my highest good is in the world's highest good. And that is like a fundamental value that I believe in. And plant-based eating just felt like that for me. And so that was a huge part of my journey was coming into that world. And I ended up working in that world for a bunch of years. I think it was 7 or 8 years total. Um, and along the way of doing that, I'm going to bring this home here, I promise. Along the way of doing that, I just saw mirrored in so many other people because I was working at organizations where we were helping people to adopt a plant-based diet or reverse, or at least um, I know
Yes,
that reversing
reverse.
disease is not really the right word to use, but
Okay, I do it all the
help
time.
help them in their disease management in ways that lessened the symptomology and lessened the
No,
root
I'm gonna
cause.
challenge you in that. Actually, disease can be reversed, and it's
Okay, I believe that, but
miracles happen every day. I help people reverse their disease. That's
okay, beautiful. So yeah, I mean, I saw it firsthand of like hundreds of times. So anyways,
me too.
um people can heal incredibly. The body is freaking amazing. So, but I was watching this process and I was seeing so many people struggle and realizing that like this and it put this personal journey on the stage of like, oh, other people would benefit from learning this information that I've learned about how to have this healthy relationship with food, because it wasn't a lack of education. Like here we were giving people all the information, giving them the support calls, giving them like, here's the exact recipes, or here's the grocery list, or here's the, whatever. And it was still a struggle for them. And people would feel so much shame around it. And I was just like, this is, and it was similar to me in my experience of like, it wasn't about the food, I
Yes.
was using food in a way, I was using food, but it wasn't about food. And so I saw this gap, and that was kind of what led me to eventually um, endeavor down the process of my research. So yeah, that's the kind of short, middle, long story. Thanks for listening.
Tara, thank you so much. I really relate, and I'm sure a lot of people relate. Isn't it interesting how going into the doctor's office, it's like same thing. Oh, birth control, fantastic, right? That you're fine. Like I never was diagnosed with an eating disorder. It was always just like, oh, just you're fine. And
Mm,
I was applauded. I was applauded for how small I was. It was like, oh, Katie's so
Mm-hmm.
small. It's just like I really wanted to hold on to that. I thought it was healthy, but I'm like, wait, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not getting my period. Let's just give her some more birth control. Gosh, and I just quickly want to point to earlier you were saying logic, how you're more emotional
Mm.
than with your decisions, and there's some statistic that what 80 to 90% of our decisions are actually emotional. Like it doesn't matter if you're the most logical, CEO person, it's still emotional, the decisions that we make, and I think it really, really is absolutely essential to manage and be aware of our emotions if we're going to be making any decisions or taking actions from an empowered place. And gosh, I relate to you so much. Like that's why I started my company Feed Your Power. And initially it's interesting really wanting to save the planet and feel empowered in plant-based eating and be strong and be like, oh my gosh. And there's a lot of statistics now literally proving that the healthiest foods that have been shown to prevent and reverse disease also are going to prevent and reverse environmental destruction. There's
Right. Yeah.
actually a lot of, I'm going to link some articles down below. Like there's a lot of clear research proving that. But what I've found lately when I think about feeding my power and like really that means feeding my mental health and my self-love, like really loving on myself, making sure that my decisions are from an empowered place. More recently, it's been clear that what's powerful, what's empowering actually is um fragile and vulnerable and
Mm.
soft. And I loved on your website, I love how you wrote you're a fierce inner work advocate, right?
Mm.
And I would just love to kind of unpack that, and maybe if you could speak more to what is this inner work and how, how can we practice that? How can we try that on?
Yeah, totally. And I just remembered that you had also asked about like what I've been doing lately for my inner work, like where that journey is
Yeah,
taking me now. So I can get into that later.
perfect. Yeah.
But yeah, so inner work is essentially the process of going beneath the surface of oneself and seeing oneself more clearly and cultivating a deeper relationship with oneself. And I would say that ultimately is a process of cultivating a compassionate, loving, honest relationship with oneself. Like inner work doesn't mean just digging in on like the little like screw hole, like little skinny little, oh, I want to see this part of me. It's like, oh no, like let's just bring it all forward. And to me, the like ultimate duo is radical honesty and radical compassion. And so it's where you are committed to saying, like, I'm going to let myself see all of it, like, even the parts that I'm ashamed of, even the parts that scare me, even the parts that I'm not proud of. But at the same time, hold compassion for yourself in all of those parts. So you're essentially telling those parts, it's okay. Like, you're safe here, you're loved here. And loved doesn't mean I'm proud of you. Love doesn't mean like I'm psyched that I have this part or I was this person or I did this thing that feels really shitty, you know? Like it's saying you're safe here. Like you're safe to be part of this wholeness of human, which is me. And that's hard. But it's I have not found I mean, I think it's essential. Like, I believe that is the human experience. I believe that if we don't do the inner work, then we are essentially living an unconscious life. And that's fine if someone wants to do that. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, but that is certainly not the life that I want to live. You know, I'm here to know myself and to grow and expand and to have the full depth and full range of what it means to be human. And that to me is that process of continually just finding these pieces of myself and learning how they fit into the equation and just um, using them to become the next evolution of me that is in some ways I think like we're always becoming the truest version of ourselves that maybe was always there, but at the same time, I believe that we're infinite beings and that can change at any time as well. Like we can be different versions of ourselves, and that doesn't mean that one was more true than another. We have different iterations. It's like we're all, yeah, we can put on different avatars, and that's really fun too. And another aspect of inner work is, I guess, related to that is this idea of sometimes, I use the word becoming often, but I also sometimes don't love the word becoming, because anything that we want to be, I truly and deeply believe that we already are. Like we have that within us. We are never adding something new to ourselves. We're actually taking away the things that block us from being that essence or from embodying that thing. And so the inner work is also the process of using self-reflection to see where we're being blocked
Mm.
from embodying who we want to be, and then going through the various healing processes, which again, like I'm saying these words as like, oh, find the blocks, do the healing process, and then embody your best self. But it's deep work, it's long game work, it's commitment. And um the path is not clear. It's not like, oh, here is the step-by-step blueprint. I mean, there are obviously things that you can do, and things that I can clearly say, like, these steps will help you along the way, but it's going to look different for everyone, and it's going to be messy. I'm sure everyone has seen the memes of like the path of success and what it looks like, and it's like a big squiggly line that looks like it's a giant knotted mess, and it's like that is the inner work. But then you get on the other side. You're perpetually getting on the other side of another squiggly mess. And that's such a rewarding and beautiful process. And it affects every aspect of your life in the same way that I was talking about. The root of disordered eating is the relationship you have with yourself. And then it's like everything else kind of stems from that. The inner work, it's like when you do the inner work, anything that you ever do to focus on your own healing will be showcased in every other aspect of your life. Like it just ripple effect to the max.
Totally. That was so beautiful. I'm curious. Let's say you're in like a funk. Maybe you didn't sleep enough, or maybe whatever it is. There's this underlying funkiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you happen to have any like non-negotiables that you do for yourself prevent that, or you really open up the door and really allow that? Take me through your process a little, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. Happy to take you through the process. And I'll say that kind of like I was saying about like there's not like a clear like delineated like steps 1 through 5.
Hmm.
It's something that is very much, I see it as kind of like a dance. It's kind of like it's more like poetry where um or just love, where it's like, okay, I'm in this relationship with myself and I'm determining what's going to be best for me in a certain moment. And sometimes that's discipline, and sometimes that's softness and openness and allowance. And sometimes, so it's like
Right.
it comes from building that deep relationship with myself, where I can determine, okay, like do I need to just let this feeling like really let myself dig in and be like, okay, I'm going to be in this anger and pain. I'm going to be in this hurt. I'm going to like let this story play out, and I'm going to let the toddler in me like have a tantrum and like just have this moment. Or there are times where I'm like, okay, like I'm going to journal to my higher self and ask for wisdom. Like, hey, like higher self, what's the best way that I could respond to this situation? Like, help me to see beyond my current perspective. And then I'll write back to myself from the perspective of my higher self. And it's like, sometimes it's like, I'm not going to go there. Like, I'm not going to let myself go into that old story. Like, that's a pain story. That's not helpful. We're not going there. And that is, like I said, that's a dance, and that's a self-knowing of like what I need in a moment. So sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, like, my inner child is hurting, and like I'm just going to hold her, and I'm going to let her cry, and I'm going to let these feelings be okay to be here. um and especially when it comes to like mental stories, I tend to have um, either a more curious approach or like okay, like what's the higher perspective approach? Just because I find that getting lost in the mind um, is really not helpful. So it's helpful if you need to understand, okay, what is the story that's like gathering the facts, like what's happening here? Where is this coming from? What is the story that's playing out? But then also, and also kind of like, what are the types of thoughts that tend to come up when I feel this way, when I feel that way? And I do a lot of nervous system work with my clients these days, and it's like there are certain thought patterns that actually you can start to see happening in different nervous system states. And so there are times where I'll have a certain type of thought, and I will know when I have that type of thought, I don't trust my brain. Like, that's not real. Like, those types of thoughts aren't true. I know that 20 minutes from now, or 2 hours from now, or tomorrow, I will look at this differently, even though in the moment I'm like, this is so true and I'm not safe or I'm misunderstood or like this isn't fair or like whatever it is, like we all have our stories, we're human. Um, and I really try to catch myself in those. And it's like, all right, this feels really true right now. And the experience of it is real. Like I'm having a real response in my body because my body thinks it's real, but I know that it's not true. And so I'm going to regulate myself. I'm going to use somatic tools. I'm going to do some deep breathing exercises. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to orient myself to my surroundings and be present. And I'm going to, it's like, it kind of just depends. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? Like, I need to go for a walk and just look at the clouds and remind myself of this moment. Or sometimes it's like, okay, like I need to go sit in meditation and I need to help my body to connect back to a grounded state of loving presence and gratitude and this higher perspective that feels so good to hold. Or sometimes it's I just need to dance. Like I don't need to analyze this thing. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to get into the like nitty gritty of figuring out what's really happening or what. It's just like, you know what, like this is not helpful right now. I'm just going to dance it out. And I think that has been one of the things that's been a learning process for me in my earlier days, which this is beautiful too. Like it was so much about like digging in and understanding and like knowing the stories and getting to the root of it and then flipping them on their head and then rewriting the story. And like that is beautiful work and it has served me so much. But I've really been learning that sometimes we don't need to do that. Like sometimes we don't need to dig in and we don't even really need to know where it came from. It's helpful. It is really helpful for building compassion to know the origin of a story or to see the connections like, oh, I feel this way with my partner because I felt that way with my dad. I feel this way in this moment because when I was a kid, this was happening. Like to know the origins, I feel like helps to give you compassion, helps to develop a relationship with your inner child or your younger self. And like that is beautiful and super healing. But for some people, that doesn't resonate. And for some people, they can get stuck there. And there's also a lot of value to the process of like simply shifting your body state and working just from where you are. And you don't always have to dig in and understand all the things. You can just, work with your body to restore safety and then move forward from there and build a new story from there. Um, so yeah, I don't remember exactly where we started that question, but that is where I landed.
That was perfect. Yeah, I was asking about your inner work, your tools for
Mm.
what's the process, and that was like
Yep.
so beautifully stated because I just have got to acknowledge you with the wisdom, the depth that you have gone with yourself and with this work. It's
Mm.
clear. It's clear hearing you speak. Like, uh, just the practice of acceptance has been a really big one that I've been working on myself and working with patients and clients through. It's this acceptance, firstly, of like, okay, this is what's coming up. First of all, being aware. Most people are not at all even aware. And like I'm guilty myself of that. I'm gonna love my guilt. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah, totally.
accept my
It's
guilt.
all welcome here.
But just the practice of awareness, it's crazy to me that I'm 30 years old and I'm still working on being aware of what I'm feeling
Mm,
coming up. I'm still working on like not only being aware, but once I'm aware, okay, can we accept this? And then you take
hmm.
it a whole nother layer where it's not just about being like, okay, what's a more positive perspective? Okay, what's a new empowering perspective? You're like, okay, what feels most loving, right? What feels most empowering to move through this? Yeah, maybe it does look like crying and like hugging it and accepting it really and just being in it. And yeah, sometimes it actually is. You're right. Like, wait a second, this isn't the truth here. Well, like, can we, it takes some practice. And my clients will get frustrated. Like, I'll give them a checklist of health promoting behaviors that we talk about that they're excited about. They're like, okay, I want to go to yoga once a week. Okay, I want to do this. I'm like, and let's feed your mental state. Let's feed your emotional health. And they're like, well, it's not exactly you can just check it off the to-do list. It's not something
Right.
that you're like, oh, did that today, done. I ate my broccoli today. Katie's gonna be proud of me. Like it's like
Yep.
this is something that it's truly I kind of think of it like whack-a-mole, like the game whack-a-mole is just gonna pop. It's just like it pops up out of nowhere. And it's
Yeah,
like acknowledging that and like a continuous lifelong meditation of just noticing.
totally. And it's kind of paradoxical, but if you've read any of the um, research that's been coming out in the past couple of years about dopamine, like dopamine nation and stuff like that, where it's like the more pain that you become accustomed to feeling, or the more pain that like you have the capacity to feel physically, the more like pleasure that you can experience, and the more like rewarding things will be for you from like a dopamine perspective, dopaminergenic, if I'm going to use that word. And it's the same with our emotional health, where it's like our capacity to be with our pain, our capacity to sit there and be like, wow, I feel so much shame. They say that shame is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult feelings to experience. To be able to say, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling my shame. Like, I'm, and again, there's that like meditative state of duality where it's like, I'm loving myself as I'm sitting and being in this shame. But there's truly a capacity that we can develop to say, like, I'm so hurt and I'm just going to let myself feel so hurt. Or I'm so angry, I'm going to let myself feel so angry. And that doesn't mean I'm going to let myself get caught in the mind story of it and tell myself, depending on what it is, like, this person is such a terrible person, or I'm such a terrible person, or the world is such a terrible place, or like whatever the story is. It's not about getting caught up in the story. It's about being with the sensations, being with the feeling, the physical, emotional, visceral, physiological sensations and feeling and of that emotion. And the more that you develop the capacity to hold that pain, like that's just like creating a deeper well that you can then feel the joys of life. And it really, it's a bi-directional thing. You don't heal in one direction. It's not like if you numb yourself to the pain, then you numb yourself to the joy. And so it is kind of paradoxical in that sense, that it's like, oh, if you allow yourself to be with all of the heavy, hard emotions, you actually create the capacity for those emotions that are more fun to experience. And again, that like everything is nuanced and gray. I Another thing that I'll say, all truth is nuanced and gray, just because you don't want to live there, like we know from like, I don't know if you're into like the Heart Math Institute or things like that, but we know that like the body is responding in a way that is disease promoting if you're spending too much time caught in the loop of those emotions like
Totally.
fear, anxiety, lust, stress, whatever. And when you move into those quote higher emotions, not better, but a more coherent state of the body, it's more health promoting. But you can't get there in a way that doesn't acknowledge the truth of your humanness, which involves the full spectrum of emotions.
Hmm.
So everything needs to be welcome.
And
So it's just complex.
there's a lot that you're speaking to. A big thing that's coming up for me is in the midst of all of this shame for feeling shame, all of this, it's one thing to be, I am a shameful person. Like this is unforgivable, like whatever it is.
Hmm.
It's one thing to really, really be that, and another thing to have the awareness of that coming up and have that little slice of separation where you're able to look at it and be like, oh, like I can see that I have shame occurring and practice like it's actually like exactly what you're saying. We can actually have compassion and empathy for that.
Right. It's like, how can I cultivate love in the face of that shame, in the face of that pain,
Right.
in the face of that fear? And the only thing worse than feeling fear is denying it. The only thing worse than feeling shame is denying it and pushing it down and pretending that it's not there and then it gets stuck. Emotions are waves. If they move through, they move out. Like just let it be in motion. Emotions are in motion. And if we stop that motion, if they get lodged and stuck in the body, that's what creates that disease state. It's not so much the fear that someone experiences momentarily when their partner says something that like hits a wound. It's not so much, the stress that comes up when you have that momentary stress in your day when you get an email and you're like, oh man, another thing. Or it's like it's the stuff that stays lodged there chronically for months, for years. And so if when that emotion comes up, you're with it, you're holding it, you're seeing it, you're looking at it, you're hearing it, you're acknowledging it, you're feeling it, you're letting it move through and do its thing. I really think of it as like a toddler having a tantrum, even though that's kind of like a negative thing. Like if you've ever been a parent or babysat or just watched a child, it's like it happens and then it's done. And then they're like toddling around with like a joyful smile again. And emotions are like that. Like, it's like they just need to say what they need to say. They just need to scream and then they're good.
Yeah.
And we need to just like let it pass through. And it's when we try and block it and we say, oh, I'm not supposed to be stressed, or I'm not supposed to be sad, or I'm not. And it's like that is actually worse. That locks up and lodges that thing in the body. And so it's like when it comes, you're with it. You, like you said, you love it. You don't shame any of those emotions. You move it through. And like that process of being able to hold those pieces, like I said, expands the capacity for the
Yeah.
joy, for the gratitude, for the bliss, for the awe, for the connection, for the presence, for all of the glorious things that like we all want to feel on a regular basis and have be our home base.
Yes. And this is a huge practice for my body image clients, my food freedom and body image
Mm.
clients. This practice of, oh my God, me in a bathing suit, oh God, all of this fear, all of this shame, all of the stories around what that means. And can we look at these thoughts and be like, oh my gosh, wow, I hear you. Like I hear these thoughts. We can still not have them cause a reaction, right? We
Hmm.
can still go to the beach and allow those fears to be there. It's like also in with this with fear in general, with shame, I just think that the longer that we hesitate or that we resist it, the worse it gets. Like if you've ever gone cliff jumping and you're like looking down, it just like gets worse the longer you like stare at it. I kind of relate that to like, yeah, going out in a bathing suit, like letting the fears of like, oh God, am I gonna survive this jump? Like, oh God, this is so what
Mm.
the heck. It's like, oh God, me having all these loud thoughts. And then if we're really allowing that to be there and be like, you know what, I hear that my subconscious is trying to protect me and that this is really scary, but I want to do this jump. Like, I want to go to the beach. Like, I want to be free in my body. And it is actually possible to have that fear be there, to have that shame, to have that rejection, loneliness, you name it, be there. And we can still like hold it and, right?
Hmm.
forward from there. And often I'd love to hear more about like the nervous system regulation practices because often the more that we like really let it pass through, the more we realize, wait, this feeling didn't last forever. You know, we think that
Hmm.
if we let ourselves feel these things, that it's never going to go away or it's going to get worse or um but yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case if we're really being empathetic and loving with ourselves
Yeah,
and accepting it.
totally. And like we said earlier, like it's just part of our wholeness, you know, like it's part of like seeing all the shadows. It's like just seeing all the parts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Mm. Want to say more about how people can reap the benefits? Like, or even, I think you nodded your head when I said non-negotiables for you. Is there?
Oh yeah. So I am like your classic, like I feel like back in like 2017, 2018, like morning routines were like the hot shit. And sometimes they still come up, but I feel like they're less of like a
Trend.
buzzword these days. But like I'm still there. My morning routine is like just fundamental for me. And I will say, similar to kind of how I started this conversation, saying like, you know, I don't have any memories of me not being a highly sensitive person. Like that's just part and parcel to my makeup. And so I acknowledge that while I believe that self-care is fundamental to everyone, I also know that I am someone who requires a lot of caretaking. Like, and I'm okay with that. You know, that's just part of like we're all humans who have different strengths and weaknesses, and those even aren't, you don't even need to use those terms. We just like, we have things. And like, there are some things that need us to do certain things in order to like work with those parts of ourselves. And it's just like, again, when you do the inner work, you know yourself, and then you know what you need in order to be the version of yourself that you want to be. Whether that's like some people need to make lists, some people need to have a whiteboard, some people need to like put all the things everywhere on their whiteboard. Some people need to have a schedule, some people need to have no schedule, some like just anyways, I really thrive with having a morning routine that grounds me and that I can count on as time for myself and that helps me to set myself up as the person that I want to be for the day. And also having an evening routine, like having connection, self-connection check-ins at the start and end of every day. I mean, ideally, I'm self-connected the whole day long, but having those very intentional routine times where I know that I'm connecting with myself, it just, I've seen such a difference in myself. And so it does, you know, non-negotiable, like I'm human. Of course, there's days where they don't happen, but for the most part, they're there and I'm super committed and devoted. You know, I'm devoted to myself and I'm devoted to every single person that I interact with and I'm devoted to the world. I really believe that like the frequency that I carry affects the world around me and I'm devoted to showing up for that. So yeah, I'm pretty unapologetic about my morning routine time. Um, and it's kind of extensive, but that's okay. So yeah, anyways, in the mornings I spend at least an hour with myself prior to some sort of movement, usually. And so that morning time these days, I've been doing a steady, essentially daily meditation practice for uh, coming up on 9 years now. And so at this point in my life, this was not always the case, but at this point in my life, it's about an hour every morning. Lately, I have an altar set up, and so I'll light some candles, and I have different things set up that just feel really meaningful to me and help me to feel, yeah, I don't need to go into that, but it's just a meaningful space that to me helps me feel connected to the world, to the universe, to the intentions that I have for my life right now, to what I'm trying to create and be in this season of life, and the ways that I'm working on my own healing right now, the things that I'm calling forth for myself, that I'm calling myself forward into. So I have different pieces that just really remind me of that and ground me in that. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of This didn't used to be the case, but you know, you fluctuate with things. So sometimes I'll do a little bit of like open eye meditation, like looking at the candles or whatever. But for the most part, yeah, I'm in meditation for about an hour there, and that involves a number of different things. I let that be really flowing based on what I need. So sometimes that's like a simple mindfulness meditation where I'm just connected to my breath. I'm watching the thoughts, letting them pass, coming back to the breath. Sometimes I'll do like a metta meditation and focus on cultivating that sense of loving kindness in my whole body, like filling my whole self and then emanating it out into the world. I do a lot of visualization work. I'm really a big believer in the science of visualization. And so I do, yeah, I do a lot of visualization work in there. So yeah, that's like the primary non-negotiables, I guess I'll say, are morning meditation and then evening journaling. Um, and yeah, there's more within that. Lately, after I meditate, I play my sound bowls. I'm really into embodiment things and anything happening with the body, like especially sound healing, and dancing are
Yeah,
just like just so that is medicine for me right now.
yes,
Um,
always for me.
and movement has always felt like medicine for me, and I know that that's something that can be um yeah, yet again, a grace space, you know, like for some people, movement can feel like a chore. It can feel like self-harm. It can feel like this thing that they force upon themselves. It can feel like this thing that people do to escape themselves, like they can have an addictive relationship to it. For me, it really doesn't feel like any of those things. It feels like such loving nourishment and joy. And I don't do anything that doesn't feel joyful. You know, it feels so good, especially when I move outside. But even if I go to like an indoor yoga class or like, you know, I was just laughing with my partner this morning saying like, yesterday I rode the spin bike in my house for an hour and did not watch any TV shows or like scroll through Instagram. Like I just sat and rode my bike and just like thought about life. And I was like, that's probably really weird. Like to have not need distractions while I'm like riding this stationary indoor bike in my living room. But he pointed out that like I'm used to doing that with running. I don't listen to things while I run, which is true. But anyways, you know, I love movement. It feels so good in my body. And so that's usually part of my morning routine as well. Um,
Beautiful. I love that you've been
yeah.
doing the sound bowls lately. And I
Oh
think
man, I'm like so all about it.
yeah, it's so beautiful to see on your Instagram you doing the sound bowls. I'm like, oh, it's so nourishing just watching. And there's something about dancing too. Like, I couldn't speak more highly of dancing.
Mm.
And of course, movement, but I think the sound is so healing. Like sound frequencies are incredibly impactful, at least for me. I'll speak for myself.
Oh, yeah,
Plus the
no.
movement, like,
Hashtag science.
yeah.
Like the
I,
more that I read into it, the more that I am just like, this is similar to what you said about like plant-based eating. It's just like, to me, this is undeniable that this
yeah.
is a reality of our world and how it influences our bodies.
Oh, yeah. Like when you're combining that with movement and you're dancing, I swear, dancing, it's incredible. I love,
Yeah, you know, can I take a moment for dance and just say that like
yes.
for anyone listening who has ever had a sense of feeling like their brain was their enemy, just because that was a super huge part of my experience, was feeling like I didn't have control over my own brain. Like I just really felt like a victim. Like it was like if I have an anxious thought or if I have like an OCD thought, like I have to follow it because I don't know how to stop it. You know, that was my like you know, many years ago younger self experience, but it's just such a terrible feeling to be like, okay, like I hope I don't think about this thing or like I hope I don't like go
Mm.
crazy in my mind today or like whatever it was. It was just like it was such a terrible feeling. And so my early work was like really about cultivating this new relationship with my brain. And that's why meditation was so healing for me because it was like I'm learning how to be with my brain and I'm learning how to trust my brain and have this new relationship with my brain. And that was so beautiful. And more recently, I feel like I've transitioned like I'm just like dropping into my body, which has been, you know, a many year process, but just especially lately, it is just like me and my brain, we're good. And it's like it's time to drop into the body and um sorry, I'm deciding what to say about it. I guess what I'll say is that being in your body helps you to move out of the brain when it feels like your brain. Like sometimes you don't have to work with the brain, similar to how I was saying, like sometimes you don't have to work with those stories. Sometimes you don't have to work with those lower emotions. Sometimes you don't have to work with the brain. Sometimes you can just work with the body and the body will take care of it because the body actually sends like it in terms of like the direction of speaking, like the direction of communication, like the body communicates more to the brain than the brain communicates to the body.
Mm, interesting.
Is what nervous system regulation and like somatic research has shown. And so when you are, or for me, like, man, when I dance, especially in the like conscious dance, ecstatic dance, like no choreography style where I'm just like letting my body do whatever it does to the music, it's so fun to just be like, oh my God, I'm like finding out what my body's doing as it's doing it. And sometimes I'm like, that was cool. Like, wow, like great moves. Like, I'm just like, you know, it's so fun. And it
Uh,
just really, it gets me out of my head like nothing else.
yeah.
And there's something so fun, and then you know it's part of that like sensuality. It's like helps us connect. Just I'm so it's so healing. I'm so all about it. I could go off, but I'll
Yeah.
stop there. Thanks for letting me have a moment for dance. It's so powerful in its own right, and yeah, the body is such a glorious thing, and we get to experience it in such a special, fun way, in such a
Yeah.
playful way through dance.
Oh God, yeah. I can't speak more highly about dance. I love seeing your dance
I
videos.
wish that we had danced more together when we lived in LA, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But
Oh, well, I mean, virtually, I'm here for it anytime.
Mhm.
Um, but there's one thing that popped in my mind as you were speaking. I think it's really interesting. This feeling of not feeling safe in your brain. Um,
Mm,
and a lot of people, you can probably relate to this. I know in my journey with disordered eating, feeling so unsafe around just eating that it's like, okay, well, let's just not. Let's just not, like you were saying, how can I avoid these anxious thoughts coming up? And through my adult life, that'll still come up, whether it be like, oh my God, I am so nervous about this guy. I'm just not gonna message them. Like I'm just not
mm,
like this like avoidant attachment kind of thing. Where it's like I would rather just not have to overthink about these things. Like my brain is just so unsafe. And how it's so cool to hear how far you've come with like, wait,
mm.
hear you thoughts, I see you, I'm actually safe here, everything's fine. Like, wow, oh, it's just nourishing to hear that. And the practice of dropping into your body and not having to overanalyze, like, it's so true. Dancing, releasing, it can be, yeah, running, biking. Um, I love that statistic too. Our bodies are definitely, there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of feelings. Like, have you ever been in pigeon pose or something? Personally, in yoga, I'll just like spontaneously cry. I'm like, where is this? I'm thinking
Yeah,
body
that's
a lot.
yeah. I think that yeah, I mean that's for sure happened to me. It's not like it happens every single practice, but it for sure has happened. But it's like a known thing, right? Like any person who's a yoga teacher or a massage therapist is like, hey, like people regularly cry. Like
Totally. Yeah.
because we're moving through some stuck emotions. Like they literally live in the body.
Yeah, and most people don't take the chance to just be with it, They're always
Hmm.
on their phones and finally the phone is in another room and they're just like, "Oh God, here we are with our body."
Yep. Right.
I can't believe it looks like it's been over an hour. I can't believe it. I feel like I could talk with you for hours and hours. Could you please tell us how can people reap the benefits of you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, my favorite place to hang out is Instagram. I am on again, off again with TikTok. I'm not as cool as the younger generations yet, but um, yeah, Instagram is where you can find me most often. I also have a podcast, Reconnect Radio, and then on my website you can find information about the different programs and offerings that I have. I have everything from like a free daily affirmation text that you can get from me every morning to like, the full group coaching experience and even one-on-one private coaching. So, yeah, everything is available there, and those are the best places to find me. I have a Facebook group as well, if you're interested in that world, doing a little bit of everything.
Yes. Wow, you're incredible. I'm linking all of this down below. And one final question. How do you feed your power?
Ooh. In addition to all the ways that we've just discussed.
Yeah.
Um, Let me think. Let me give myself like 30, not 30 seconds, it's too long to leave everyone hanging.
Okay.
Um, I really, I'm gonna go back to self-love. And I just think that giving myself, being my own source of love is like when I'm most in my power, because that's when I feel like, I'm so filled up that I can give to the world in the ways that I want to give, and like that feels really powerful to me, to be like I am this just like force of like vibrating love, like being sent out to the world, and just holding that essence feels so powerful and so beautiful. And it also is the way towards any type of growth that anyone is trying to experience, any type of change, any type of, yeah, like habit change, behavior change, personal growth, like that comes through love. That doesn't come, you can't hate your way there. It doesn't happen. And so like loving yourself is the ultimate power for sure.
Boom! Mic drop. So true. That's so good. Thank you, Tara. I really am excited to share this. Oh, you're absolutely incredible. Was there any last words? Anything that you're like, oh, I really wanted to mention this or?
No, I think that we ended up following up on all the little questions that you had asked that I kind of veered from in my long answers. So, yeah, no, this was really lovely. And it's just been so fun to have this conversation with you, Katie. So, thank you for having me. Thank you for seeing me. And I am excited to do it on my podcast sometime. Get to
Yay!
get to flip the mic and chat with
Oh,
you.
that would be so fun. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so open and clear and just, yeah, having this clarity with yourself, being able to speak to that. I know I feel so much less alone in the world. Thanks
Mm,
to being
yeah.
vulnerable and open on all the platforms. It's really, really nourishing. You're really helping to heal this shame wound I think a lot of people have by just like being yourself. It's so beautiful. So thank you, everyone. Links below. And thank you so much. I love you.
Yeah, it's mutual.
Ooh, thank you, Tara. We are not alone in these feelings. There are so many tools in our toolbox now that we can that we can be with ourselves, that we can be with each other. I really hope this makes you feel so safe and so lovely in your own skin, in your own body, around food. Thank you for connecting with us today. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Do send Tara a DM, be like, hey, you and Vitamin Katie. Oh, do you feel connected to us at all? Do you relate? Please let us know. I really hope this helped. And I hope you feel so empowered next time you're around food, next time you look in the mirror, next time you're feeling a lot of feelings. Oh, to be human. Take a deep breath. Oh, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Much love to you. Bye.